Let's see if that's probably a better view. We'll try to sync everything up, and it shouldn't be too hard. It's just something I've never done before. I bought myself a nice camera like last week, and I'm like kind of in over my head, I think, right now with the time I have to be able to like invest in learning and getting better at this. But whatever, one bite at a time, right? I have been in all sorts of mental head spaces. It's that I've kind of tracked my own personal ebb and flow to about 3 months. Every 3 months that, I can grind for 3 months and go. And then I need like a really extended break, like 5 days is kind of, and it could be just with the work I'm doing right now, in combination with, between actual bartending job and, just work at home, whether it's cleaning the house, whether it's maintaining my plants, whether it's maintaining my garden, which is also my plants, my body, which is exercise, which is incredibly important. And it helps everything else, kind of makes everything else a little easier to bear with. If you kind of kick your own ass at the gym a few times a week, you can kind of, it tends to be a little easier to do just regular life shit. It's not as like stressful. So been going to the gym recently more than I was for a few weeks. I needed a break because I had a little elbow injury. That was really quite annoying, but I think I've done some good work to kind of curb that. Physical therapy. Thank you. So I want to talk about, I don't know what I want to talk about. I wanted just to talk and to try filming myself. So this is all improv, I actually didn't script this one. I script every other one. Let's see. There was a few points that have been coming up in my head lately. One of them is, God damn, I can't even talk. Let's do a little more coffee to try to get in the juju of everything. I've been thinking about talking more about plants on this podcast and doing more digestible little bits for people, because I understand 3 hours is not the most ideal length of time to listen to something. I prefer it because, I can listen for, an hour while I'm going to the gym, or hour and a half at the gym, or whatever, hour at the grocery store. I knock out a few hours during the day on a day off where I'm like getting the shit done, or if I'm setting up the bar at work, I have something to listen to, and then I can like listen to it before work, after, whatever. I can kind of just tune in and resume where I was at. And I find it enjoyable, entertaining to listen to long-form conversations. Other people, however, do not. And I've seen on the stats on my analytics that people aren't listening as long as, I might listen to a podcast, which is totally cool. I don't always listen to every podcast I follow the whole way through, but I want something a little more approachable and digestible. So I'm going to do these like little one-off episodes. I'm trying to record it with the camera, this one, but if not, you might just hear me on the airwaves talking about this. But I think it's cool to kind of offer something a little quick and chewable. I want to talk about plants. Let's talk about plants, because I had a friend over a few weeks ago, and she's like, I was telling her about, garden stuff as I was going over my garden and what I had going on. She's like, why don't you talk about this on your podcast? She's like, you're fucking right. And another thing with the podcast, I want to stop drinking as much on it, because, oftentimes the people I have on my podcast are people that it's usually like a first time or second time official hang, besides just engaging in another public environment. So for us to kind of hang one-on-one, like, yeah, you celebrate a little bit and you drink a little bit, but I just find that that's not always the best way for me to engage with another human being, or engage with my own thoughts and be as articulate as I can. So I think kind of inhibiting some of the alcohol, and I also can't really drink right now because of I went to the vocal doctor, and I've got some strain. If you can probably hear, my voice is a little hoarse. I've been drinking a lot of water. There might be a nodule on there. That's not really for sure until I kind of lower the inflammation. I'm on like a steroid right now, so I'm going to get huge. No, I'm on a steroid right now, so hopefully that kind of drives some inflammation out. However, just a little annoying to have to deal with that. It's all good. You live and you learn, you grow. I took a an extra day off this week to kind of recover my voice as well and to get this done. Let's see. So yeah, anyway, however, so when I talk about plants, I'll get to that point, and also I want to bring up the point of, shorter digestible episodes and less boozy booze, because it's not the best thing to do while I'm trying to be a show host. So with that, I want to talk about gardening and gardening in Arizona, because I've learned only how to garden in Arizona because that's where I live. Well, I guess I can narrow it down to a few things I think are essential. A lot of people say, it's so hard to grow things out here. I'm like, no, it's not. I mean, if you've got a water source, if you got good soil, you're fine. And if you know what to plant, when to plant it, you're fine too. That's another thing. So there's what I would recommend people, especially those of you who live in Arizona, if you want to start a garden, obviously reach out to me. But also, you can look up a low desert planting calendar. So there's this guy named Greg Peterson. He lives in North Phoenix. He runs the Urban Farm, and he does like an Urban Farm University kind of thing. It's basically just classes where he teaches you how to do various techniques, like growing fruit trees, how to grow vegetables, how to do year-round gardening, and what to garden when. So he has this I think it's about 40 or 50 plant list of when to plant, when to transplant, when to harvest, optimal times for each, category of plant. And he kind of gives you like base level stuff. So like, say it's like 40, 50 plants, whatever, you'll go off corn. Corn you want to plant in March, right? And then it's like a summer crop, or certain things you want to, like, if you read like seed packets, a lot of them aren't necessarily, what's the word, man? A little foggy, I guess. They don't really pertain to Arizona's climate as much. I guess you could say that, because we don't really have frosts. We have microclimates and stuff. We do have little frost, and it does get a little cold over winter occasionally. And we just had a little cold spell like last week that I saw some purpleness happen on my plants on a few leaves. And the purple usually kind of is an indicator of frost damage. If you can kind of, I don't have any plants to show, but dead air. Anyway, purple. I'm not even high, dude. I don't even know what's going on. Yeah, so anyway, there's a little bit of frost last week. That's what I was saying. Okay, so usually it doesn't dip below 40 very often. In the winter, occasionally it does. So we basically have a year-round growing climate. So what I would say is to kind of refer to that low desert planting calendar. You can find it on Google pretty easily. And I think you have to subscribe to an email, then it gives you a PDF download. And then if you really wanted to just unsubscribe right away, you can do that too as soon as you get your PDF. I think that's how I did it. But it's a cool resource to kind of refer to. And now I kind of have that in my head, and I know when to plant what. And, you can always be safe with herbs. Herbs are easy as fuck. But every herb's a little different. Certain herbs like more water, certain herbs like less water. And I would say mint is the ones who like more water. But mint you want to kind of keep in its own container, because it'll quickly spread over your garden and take over. I've had mint that had taken over, I don't know, like a 10 by 10 area. It was awesome. I had mint all the time, but it wasn't like ideal. So kind of keep them in a pot, and they do like to be wet. So they like a lot of water, because mint often grows like right on like a stream. Thyme, you don't want to have a lot of water. You don't want to have really good soil for thyme. Thyme. So, think about it like a little child. Like, if you spoil that kid, and he's not going to develop any character. If he doesn't ever get in trouble, if he always gets whatever he wants, he's not going to develop a whole lot of character. He's probably going to get his ass kicked one day, and it's going to be the most dramatic, traumatizing thing ever for him. So, the same way with thyme and a few other herbs, you don't want to give them the best, nicest life, because they won't develop good character or good flavor. So you don't want them to have a lot of water. You want them to kind of be, so for mine, I have like raised beds. And so I kind of make sure all the soil bows down to the middle. So it kind of flows down like the water does. So at the middle of like right, raised bed, like rectangle, the middle is the lowest point. And so I'll do the more higher water requirement plants in the middle, and the lower water requirement plants to the edge. So my thyme and certain tomatoes are on the edge too, but they all kind of get even water. But the ones I particularly put my thyme and lemon thyme away from the drip line, so it doesn't get as wet. So yeah, those are some cool things to think about. Herbs are pretty easy to maintain. Basil's pretty easy. I like herbs a lot, so I plant a lot of herbs, and I almost don't have enough sometimes because I have like 6 big basil plants, and I feel like I'm concerned because you never really want to harvest over 10% of the plant at a time. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as well. You don't want to pick it down to the bare minimums and kind of stress the plant out to try to reproduce, because as much as those leaves are tasty, they also provide life and energy for that plant. So that's an important thing. Something to also note about Arizona is it is hot and it is dry, and there's not a lot of atmosphere in between us and the sun, compared to like a humid environment. There's a lot more water in the atmosphere, so there's more restriction of sunbeams going through. So think about, it's 85 in Arizona and you're standing right out in the middle of the sun and it feels like 100 degrees. Well, you could do the same thing in somewhere where it's a more humid climate. It's going to be less intense because there's more things in the way of that, kind of filtering that infrared light out, right? And so that infrared light is the part of the electromagnetic spectrum that you can't see. Infrared, you can't see red, but it produces heat. And so that is something that kind of helps to evaporate water. So in order to kind of curb that, because we're a dry climate out here, if you're going to use water and you want to keep most of that water in the soil, I'd suggest doing like a 2-inch layer of either hay, or I like to use shredded cedar because it looks sexy, it smells good, it helps deter pests because the natural essential oils in cedar are kind of pest deterrents. It's not dangerous for humans. I wouldn't probably eat a whole lot of it because it's wood. And obviously, and yes, what that does is it over time will break down into the soil and create kind of a like a barrier between, right, the drying effect of the sun or just environment in general. So it kind of keeps water in, and then as it breaks down over time, it creates nutrients for the plants. Another big thing to know about plants is you have 3 essential micronutrients in the soil that are super important for plant growth. And there's various plant needs as far as like minerals and elements go, but the main 3 are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Phosphorus is good for root growth. Potassium is, I believe, stem growth. I can't fucking remember. Flowering plants need a lot of phosphorus or potassium. And then I could be talking about my ass. I'm pretty sure that's right. The phosphorus part I'm right about, and the second part I'm like, and then nitrogen is for leaf growth. Nitrogen is one of the more prevalent requirements for plants. It's so you'll see on like a plant fertilizer, you'll see 3 numbers, like a 5-5-5. That means it's like 5% by weight of whatever you're buying is this, right? So 5 is usually NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. K is potassium. So you have these numbers which indicate the concentration of fertilizer in your plant. And so say you want to plant a plant, you just look up optimal, go on Google and type in, so say I want to plant marigold. Okay, optimal marigold fertilizer requirements, right? Or even indoor plants. I looked up ZZ plant and, I found a 20-20-20 balanced fertilizer is a good option for a ZZ plant indoor. Cool, right? So you have all these different ways to kind of gauge that if you kind of know those base starting things, and then you can kind of look it up and be better for your plants. I mean, all this stuff is so easy to find. You just have to know a few terms to let you into the whole system, right? So like, if you didn't know the term fertilizer, you wouldn't know how the fuck to know how to feed the plant. So know the term fertilizer. So optimal fertilizer requirements for blah, 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 insert plant. Optimal water requirements for blah, 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 insert plant, right? Especially for indoor, you want to have, you want to kind of get that to a T, because some indoor plants, if you skip watering for even one day and miss it, you'll see dramatic results where like, oh fuck, they just dropped 30 leaves. Or if you get too much water, it's like, oh fuck, it just dropped 60 leaves. You're like, God damn it, I just got this plant so many leaves and I don't know what happened. So what what I also have come to know, we're switching to indoor plants now, I guess, is with indoor plants over summer, Arizona's hot and dry, right? And obviously we have a little wet season, which kind of helps, but it's hot. So I find myself watering my plants every day. I mean, not the same plants, sometimes same plants, but every day just going and going and going. If somebody wants to grow a coffee plant, that shit needs to be wet all the time. Its roots need to always be wet. But if you're growing a money tree, like those ones where they weave the stems together and like kind of like a braid, you can find them in any kind of nursery generally, and they're awesome, pretty plants, but they do not like to be really wet. Their roots can be susceptible to rot, and if they're too wet, then they start to drop leaves like crazy. And I've had 2 that completely drop leaves. I'm like, what the hell? I didn't even think I watered it that much. So you can honestly water them once a week over general, 85, 90 degrees and below. But as soon as it gets into those 100-degree temps, like you're going to have to water a little more. So I would suggest if you're going to buy indoor plants to look up specific water requirements and then write them on like masking tape on your plant pot so you know what to do. And if you forget, just like maybe mark a calendar. Or like if it says water once a week, just say, okay, cool, I water on Mondays. You can always test the soil with a little, like a popsicle stick, and see where the water line is. And some plants you can kind of pull the root ball out. I don't suggest always doing that, but occasionally if you need to, like a money tree is easy to pop out because the soil's generally drier. You can see and you can feel at the bottom like, oh, it's wet. Or you can even kind of squeeze the pot if it's still in a plastic pot, not like ceramic. You can feel for any kind of give. And it usually kind of indicates wetness. But I mean, indoor plants are also in lower light settings, so the susceptibility to mold and fungus and different bacterial rot within the pot is also an issue. So the darker the room is, the less water you need. The brighter the room is, you need a little bit more water. And so you have these different variables floating around. You got light, you got water, you got wetness, you got dryness, you got temperature. And so it's kind of like this weird game to learn all of them. And so what I would suggest if you're new but to a plant situation is just buy something easy. Buy a pothos. Man, I don't want to... Yeah, I got to reach. Hang on. If my camera situation is panning out, you can see a pothos. Pothos are pretty common plants. They're known as devil's ivy. They hail from Sri Lanka, I'm pretty sure. Please fact check me. Please fact check me if you don't trust my confident appeal, or whatever the word is. My confident vibe, or whatever. Pothos are cool plants because they're called devil's ivy for a reason. They're hard to kill. So you don't need a whole lot of effort with them, and they survive. They can be kind of wet the whole time. They can kind of dry out a little bit, but once you start to notice a yellowing leaf or two, that's the point that's when I can't talk today. That's when you know you need a little bit of water. So suggest pothos. I suggest peace lilies. Peace lilies, I don't have one in this room, so I can't really show you. They put out a nice little white flower, which is funny because they've been bred so much for the indoor plant game. The ones in the wild, the ones that you... Compared to the ones in the wild have aromatic flowers, like really aromatic apparently. But the ones indoor, they bred that out, unfortunately, so there's not really any kind of pretty smell. But they're great. They don't need a whole lot of water, and they usually tell you when they need water by drooping over. I like to try to catch that before it happens so that they don't stress out, because they don't want to stress your plant out trying to search for water and it kind of falls over, and then you put water in, and it takes a few hours for it to kind of perk up. For peace lilies are the case where it takes a few hours. If you get a nerve plant, which I don't also have here, that's in my room, they will drop. They're so dramatic. They just like splay over over the sides of their pot, and they're super dramatic. So you hit them with water, and like 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, they start to perk back up. I try to catch that beforehand so it doesn't stress them out. But ultimately, you're trying to recreate kind of the environment that these plants grew in. So you look up a pothos and you look up where it's from. Okay, we'll look up the weather where it's from. What is it used to? But the funny thing is, certain plants, as they're bred, for an indoor use, they kind of develop different characteristics, and to grow them the same way that their environment kind of requires is not always the smartest move, just because you're indoor and you're in a protected environment and you don't have as much susceptibility to outdoor variability, right? So the temperature is going to be a little more constant, even though, say it's in the summer in Arizona, it's a little warmer. You're going to have more of you're not going to have as much of a diurnal shift as maybe its home area would be. So an example I would give is a money tree, the ones you typically see. It's also called like a fucking something aquatica. Can't remember. Something aquatica is the actual name. So you hear aquatica, like, well, what does that mean? That means water. These plants are used to living in a wet environment, but they're also used to being huge trees. They get up to over 30 feet tall, and they produce like edible seeds. But we grow them in a dwarf setting where they kind of weave the things together in their little pot. Well, that's a little environment. You don't want them to get big, and so the way they're bred and grown means their roots are kind of closer together, and they don't develop as big of roots and spread out. And so they don't need as much water because they're kind of more compact and they're used to a different kind of environment. So plants will change depending on how they're bred, so to speak. So I think that's a cool little chewable tidbit. Sorry I fucked up my words a few times. I tried. I think I'm getting warmed up enough. I'm going to record another episode after this sans video camera, because I'm only allowed to shoot 29 minutes, and I want to have maybe a 45-minute talk with the microphone and the airwaves to see if y'all are entertained by that. And so that's a little plant tidbit. So snippet tidbit. I think this is cool. I'm going to get better at them. I'm going to actually write notes next time and have more specific ones. This I guess the second one I've done. I did the one about scents and stuff and essential oils, but I've learned more since then, and I have more information to share. And again, this is all Googleable, so if I say some things and you might believe me, but fact check me, find out for yourself, because I don't want to mislead anybody and lead you astray. So I think that's all I got. So